The office was wrapped in an almost eerie silence, the kind that only came long after everyone had gone home. The faint hum of the air conditioning was the only sound, broken now and then by the gentle swish of a mop gliding across polished marble floors. Maria moved with practiced ease, her worn cleaning cart rolling softly beside her. She had cleaned these executive offices countless times, but tonight something caught her eye. On the far end of the conference room, a massive whiteboard stood covered from top to bottom in tangled financial equations and dense calculations. Numbers, arrows, and symbols sprawled chaotically like an unsolved puzzle. She stepped closer, her eyes scanning the mess with growing curiosity. These weren't just random scribbles, this was a problem, and a big one. Maria's mind began to work almost unconsciously, the way it used to back in her university days before she had to drop out. She noticed misplaced figures, overlooked connections, gaps begging to be filled. Setting her mop aside, she picked up a marker left on the table. Her hand hesitated for a moment, as if unsure whether she should cross this invisible line. Then, with a steady breath, she began rewriting, rearranging, and correcting. Equations that had been left hanging suddenly fit together, numbers balanced, patterns emerged. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice the clock ticking past midnight. In that quiet room, Maria was no longer just a cleaner, she was a problem solver, and she was on the edge of cracking something far bigger than she realized. Daniel Hayes, the CEO, had not planned to return to the office that night. A late dinner meeting had ended earlier than expected, and he thought he might catch up on a few urgent emails before heading home. As he stepped out of the elevator onto the top floor, the emptiness of the building pressed in, until he heard it. A faint squeak, rhythmic and deliberate, coming from the conference room. He approached quietly, curiosity piqued. Through the glass wall, he saw a figure standing at the whiteboard. At first, he assumed it was one of his analysts pulling an all-nighter, but as he drew closer, his brow furrowed. It wasn't an analyst. It was Maria, the night cleaner, dressed in her simple uniform, her hair pulled back, her focus locked on the equations in front of her. Daniel stood frozen for a moment, watching as she scribbled symbols and numbers with a confidence that startled him. She paused, erased a section, and rewrote it with rapid precision. It was the very problem his elite finance team had been struggling with for months, a complex, multimillion-dollar puzzle with no breakthrough in sight. When she finally stepped back to review her work, Daniel stepped into the room. Maria startled, nearly dropping the marker. "Where did you learn to do that?" he asked, his voice a mix of astonishment and intrigue. Her eyes darted to the floor. I studied economics once," she murmured. "Before life got in the way." The next morning, Maria arrived at work earlier than usual, unsure what to expect. The memory of the CEO catching her at the whiteboard lingered in her mind, making her both nervous and embarrassed. She had half expected to be scolded for touching something that wasn't her business. Instead, she found a neatly folded note in her locker, "Meet me in my office at 9 a.m., Daniel Hayes." At precisely 9, she stood outside his door, fidgeting with the hem of her uniform. Daniel greeted her warmly and gestured for her to sit. On his desk lay a thick folder stuffed with reports, graphs, and spreadsheets. "I want to see something," he said, sliding the folder toward her. "This is a real problem my team has been trying to solve. Take your time." Maria hesitated, glancing at the complex financial data inside. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked quietly. "Because last night," Daniel replied, "you touched something my top analysts couldn't. I want to know if it was luck, or skill." Her fingers trembled slightly as she began skimming through the pages. The challenge was enormous, an intricate web of numbers tied to a $200 million crisis threatening the company's future. Yet as she read, patterns began forming in her mind. She asked for a pen and paper. Daniel leaned back in his chair, watching her. He didn't just see a cleaner anymore, he saw someone with a mind sharp enough to take on the company's greatest challenge. Maria didn't go home that night. She stayed in the small break room adjoining the finance department, surrounded by stacks of reports and a laptop Daniel had arranged for her. A half-empty mug of coffee sat beside her, long gone cold, but she barely noticed. Her focus was absolute. Hours passed as she dissected every spreadsheet, every graph, every transaction record. She cross-referenced figures, spotted inconsistencies, and identified hidden inefficiencies buried so deep the finance team had overlooked them entirely. Her notebook filled with calculations, sketches of supply chains, and cost-cutting strategies that didn't just patch the problem, they overhauled it. Around 5 a.m., with the city still cloaked in pre-dawn darkness, Maria sat back in her chair, exhausted but exhilarated. She had found the answer. Not a temporary fix, but a comprehensive solution that would save the company from a $200 million disaster and set it up for even greater profit in the future. When Daniel arrived, he found her waiting in his office, eyes heavy but glowing with quiet pride. She laid out her findings, explaining each step with clarity and conviction. By the time she finished, Daniel was leaning forward, hands clasped, completely stunned. Later that morning, the boardroom was silent as Maria, still in her cleaning uniform, presented her solution. When she finished, there was a moment of stunned stillness, then applause. And when Daniel announced she was the one who had cracked the unsolvable, several executives exchanged looks of disbelief. The quiet maid had just saved the company. The following week, the company gathered in the main atrium for what was announced as a special recognition event. Employees from every department filled the space, chatting curiously. Maria stood off to the side, still in her plain uniform, unsure why Daniel had insisted she be there. When he stepped up to the microphone, the room fell silent. Sometimes, he began, the greatest talent hides in the most unexpected places. He spoke about the $200 million crisis the company had faced and how his best minds had been unable to find a solution. Then, with a proud smile, he gestured toward Maria. This woman, he said, solved it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Maria felt her cheeks burn as dozens of eyes turned to her. Daniel continued, from this day forward, Maria will no longer be cleaning our floors, she'll be helping to shape our future. He announced her new role as a senior financial strategist and revealed that the company would fully fund her return to university to finish her degree. Maria's eyes welled up, and for a moment she couldn't speak. The applause thundered through the atrium as she stepped forward, shaking Daniel's hand with trembling fingers. You changed my life, she whispered. Daniel's smile softened. No, Maria, you changed ours. In that moment, it wasn't just a promotion, it was proof that brilliance knows no uniform, and that a single act of belief can change the course of a life forever.